morning, learners. My name is Vijay Arya, and I am the academic counselor for the MBA program of MMPC 12, that is Strategic Management. And in today's session of channel-based counseling, I will be referring to block number 2, where two major unit number 4 and 5 will be referred. So let's discuss the key point that we will be discussing in today's session of Unit 4, which is external environment analysis. In this case, we will be referring to some of the analysis factors or the tools that are very commonly referred, including the PESTEL and EFE metrics, that is external factor evaluation. Apart from that, the concept of industrial organization model will also be referred, and the relationship of the general environment and the strategy will also be dealt in the present session of Unit 4. So let's start discussing about the environment analysis, what exactly the environment analysis is. So when a firm refer to a specific type of strategy, so they need to analyze the market environment first, and based on that, they make a specific plan of action, and accordingly, they define different strategies and which are subsequently formulated and implemented. So in this particular case, it is very important to analyze the environment first, which helps the manager to define a specific policy of depending on the situation. So in this case, the first level of the external analysis, that is in terms of understanding of the macro environment, is in terms of a influence on the success or the failure of an organizational strategies. Apart from that, the external environment, which is not a static one, it's a dynamic one, which keep on changing, and therefore the changing holds both the opportunities and the threats for the organization. Hence, the environment analysis become very crucial for the organization. Apart from that, if we refer the environment analysis, then it assesses the external environment, which is also known as the environmental scanning or the industry analysis, where a detailed analysis of the rival's position, the competitive edge, maybe the position of the customers, their negotiation position, maybe the suppliers' negotiation position, maybe the position of the new entrants is considered to the maximum extent. In this particular case, we also need to understand the process of analyzing external environment, which includes three important steps. The step number 1 is the environmental scanning. After the scanning is referred by the manager, then the second step arises in terms of the assimilation, and third is in terms of the evaluation. So we will be referring each of these steps. So in the first step, that is the environmental scanning, in terms of the external environment analysis, it is the way in which the manager try to collect the information related to the political, socio-cultural, economical, technological, legal, and say ecological changes which are taking place in the environment. And based on that, it can be through different sources. Primarily, the secondary sources are referred, like the internet-based sources, the sources of different other newspapers, magazines, research articles, which helps the manager in terms of understanding what is taking place, what kind of updates are there in the market. Now, the second aspect or the second step in this analysis of external environment is the assimilation, which is a kind of assessment of the opportunities and the threats which are available with the organization in terms of the external factors. So from that perspective, the opportunities and threats of that form with respect to the industry are analyzed, are considered. And in the case of step number three, that is evaluation, the impact of these opportunities and threats, particularly with respect to the different factors, are analyzed, and maybe that is for the purpose of what will be the instant change, or whatever would be the kind of instant impact of these changes or these environment related factors, maybe the short term or maybe the long run impact. So those type of evaluation are considered in the case of step number three. Now, when we refer the environmental scanning, we need to refer what exactly the environmental scanning means. So it is normally accomplished by systematically monitoring and studying current events. It is not a one time process, it's a continuous process and it's a rigorous process. One has to keep track all the kind of changes taking place in the market, and therefore it helps in terms of constructing scenarios and employing the kind of Delphi method, also known as the Delphi technique, which is a technique for finding a consensus among a group of knowledgeable experts. So let's understand the Delphi technique first, so that one can develop a kind of understanding how exactly this technique is very prominent in terms of the environment analysis. So it is designed to forecast viable solutions to problems where data was either missing or incomplete. The objective of Delphi technique is to obtain the most reliable consensus of opinion of a group of experts as to the best workable solutions to the problems for which the organization is exploring the solutions. So in the visual, you must be seeing the facilitator, which is from the organization side, and subsequently the kind of problem is shared, the kind of concept is shared with the experts and a group of experts. And in this scenario, all these experts are unknown to each other, and the proposal is facilitated through the facilitator in terms of getting their input on it. And once the respective expert provide the inputs to the facilitator, it is applied, it is implemented, and subsequently given back to the expert with a view that to what extent the subsequent proposal or the group of expert provide further solution to it. Once these subsequent activities in terms of multiple time sharing the problems and getting the updates from the experts is reached to a level which is considered to be a considerable position, then this is something acceptable by the organization. Now, in the case of environmental scanning, it is subsequently also referred in terms of the constructing scenarios. And here the constructing scenarios is something helpful in the future course of action, which involves a detailed and reasonable view of how the business environment of an organization might develop in the future based on the groupings of key environmental influences and drivers of change about which there is high level of uncertainty with the organization. Now, if we refer the business environment, then we can divide it into two broader categories. One is the internal environment and another is the external environment. In the case of internal environment, which is within the organization, or the organization is having the detailed outline or the control on it. So in that particular case, whether we consider the concept of the value system of the organization, mission and vision, and say objectives of the organization, organizational structure, flat, or what other options are available with the organization is something the part of the internal environment. Then the corporate culture and the quality of human resources which are being engaged or expected to be engaged by the organization. Then the position of the labor unions, Either they are highly cooperative or they are agitating in nature. So all those aspects are something within the organization. Therefore, they are part of the internal environment. Apart from that, the physical resources and technological capabilities of the organization are also the part of the internal environment. On the other side, if we refer the external environment from the point of view of the business environment, then it is further divided into two parts. One is the micro environment, and second is the macro environment. In the case of the microenvironment, we consider the customers, organization, the competitors' position, market position, the suppliers' position, the intermediaries, which are somewhere not directly linked with the organization, but at the same time, bit external and can influence the position of the market. On the other hand, if you refer the third type of environment, which is macro environment, it is explicitly the external one and which are considered while referring to any specific plan design, and selection of a specific type of strategy. Here, the macro environment consists of the economic environment, political environment, legal environment, technological environment, global environment, and the social-cultural environment and the demographic position. Now, based on this discussion of the different environment and environment-related aspects, we now need to refer the concept of industrial organization model, and it is basically a forms which is the basis to understand the concept of the strategy leading to competitive advantage for the firm. And this IU model adopts an external perspective on strategic decision making. And in this particular case, it is assumed that the features and the conditions of the external environment impact the formulation and implementation of strategies in order to generate above average returns and thereby gain competitive advantage. If we refer the process involved in the IU model, that is industrial organization model process, then it is referred in terms of the competitive advantage or to meet out the competitive advantage. Initially, to start with the external environment or the analysis of the external environment, based on which the industry selection takes place, which is basically based on the opportunities and threats available to a specific type of industry. Then, once the industry selection is finalized, then strategy is formulated and the resource development is finalized based on a specific strategy. And after that, strategy implementation, referred, where the strength and weaknesses are subsequently analyzed, and which helps out the IU model to take a kind of competitive advantage out of the SWOT type of analysis taken place. In this case, if we subsequently examine the IU model, then it is a kind of external environment which primarily includes the general, industrial, and the competitive environment to identify the external environment attributes and decide the limit the organization strategic solutions accordingly. Now, based on the structural parameters of the industry or the set of industries one can refer to, it helps in terms of choosing with the high potential for the returns. Apart from that, the strategies associated with above average returns should be developed based on the features of the industry in which an organization plans to operate. So it is in advance one as a manager, strategic manager, need to plan in advance. Apart from that, it also acquire or develop the key resources which is required for the successful implementation of the formulated strategies and the plans. It is a kind of competitive advantage which can be achieved if an organization successfully implements the strategic actions which basically enable an organization to utilize its resources for meeting the demands of external environment. Now, when we are talking about the external environment, then we cannot skip the concept of pastel analysis or the pastel framework, which is a kind of framework where the external forces are classified and they are in detail studied. So the pastel refer to six broad categories of the factors. One is the political, economic, sociocultural, technological, legal, and the ecological factors. Now, this pastel analysis or pastel framework changes in these external forces which affect the changes in consumer demand for both, that is the industrial as well as the consumer products and the services. And therefore, these external forces affect majorly any of these aspects. It can be the types of products being produced by the firm, the nature of positioning of the firm in the industry, and the future course of action according to it. It can also affect the market segmentation strategies being adopted or maybe the necessary changes that they need to apply to. It can also affect the types of services being offered by the firm or maybe the choice of business too. And if we refer the pastel framework, then it is used to understand the most important factors at the present time, and it should be primarily used to look into the future impact of these factors on the firm, which may be different from their present or the past impact. It is also a kind of crucial for the organization to identify and evaluate the external opportunities and threats so as to develop a clear mission, design strategies to achieve long term objectives, and develop policies to achieve short term goals. Now, we need to understand the pastel framework from the point of view of each of these six factors that it includes. So, the first we will be referring the political factors. So, in that case, the political position or the political factor in detail is analyzed. So, let's take the case of government stability. Maybe the central government, the state government, the local government, or the foreign government to which this specific firm is associated, or maybe in future there's a link of this firm with these type of political or political stabilities. So whether it is into the stand-alone position or they are into the coalition mode, or is it something that some type of internal dispute is taking place? So these aspects help the organization in terms of deciding its future course of action or the strategies for the business. Apart from that, the values and belief of the political party in terms of shaping the policies also helps out the organization in terms of the political factor from the external environment point of view. It also includes the kind of regulatory positions towards the trade and the global businesses, which can be either the liberal, which means open-ended, means there is no rigidity, but on the other hand, if the rigid regulations are there, it means the close-ended environment is there, and it is not a kind of welcome sign for the newcomers to go global or to enter into the global market. Apart from that, the taxation policies can also be part of the political factors, or maybe the kind of the social sector or the priority of the political factor towards the social sector is also somewhere helpful in terms of whether the inclusiveness is being referred or is being prioritized or maybe is it unattentive in nature, or maybe a direct beneficiary transfer as one of the important schemes we have seen in the case of the Indian model is somewhere addressing the inclusiveness. So those type of aspects are somewhere referred from the point of view of the social sector or the inclination of the government towards the social sector. So all these aspects, parameters are considered while referring to the political factors. On the other hand, that is the second aspect of PESTEL framework is the economic factors, where very commonly the national income, which subsequently include the GNP trends, personal disposable income, personal consumption, maybe the interest rates, saving rate, corporate savings are considered. Apart from that, the position of the money supply, maybe the position of balance of payment, maybe two major accounts are there. So what is the position of that is somewhere considered in terms of developing a specific strategy or defining about the feasible external market where the firm can decide about a specific or a unique strategy. The economic factor can also include the position of the inflation rate, the unemployment position, the disposable income, the business cycle, trade deficit position, or the position of the surplus trade. So these are some of the economic factors. Apart from that, socio-cultural factor are also played somewhere very important role in the case of pastoral framework while defining or identifying the strategic position, which include the population demographies, which further includes three major things. First, the ethnic composition, aging of population, regional changes in population growth and decline. Other is the social mobility, lifestyle changes, the frequency to that, and what level the lifestyle is, playing the important role in the respective country. Attitudes to work and leisure, maybe the education spread or the erosion of the educational standards also plays a crucial role while referring to the sociocultural factors. Then the health and fitness awareness among the population and the multiple income families are some of the prominent variables which are considered. The other type of factors within PESTEL framework is the technological aspect, which may include the kind of biotechnology or the aspect of biotechnology available in that country, process innovation, like as an example, we can take different type of innovative things are taking place even in India as well, like the fast tag, maybe the single or online single window system for getting the clearances or getting all the type of processes to take place at a single place rather than moving to multiple locations, multiple offices, and multiple counters. Apart from that, the kind of digital revolution, we have seen the kind of UPI and e-wallet here in India as well. The government spending on research and development can also create a kind of facilitation. So, to what extent the government is providing the research and development related spending, or what is the the key aspects that they are referring in R&D. The government and industry focus on technological efforts like the digital locker we have seen. Apart from that, the new discoveries or the developments which are taking place in the market and the level of its adaptability and awareness in the market also plays a crucial role. For as an example, we can take the case of blockchain technology, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, or the case of the robotics, which very commonly we have seen a upliftment in the industrial sector, which facilitated the automations too. Apart from that, the speed of technology transfer in a specific country also helps out in terms of analyzing the technological, environmental technological factors from the point of view of the pastoral framework if one need to understand too. Apart from that, the rates of obsolescence in the existing technology and is it very quickly taking place than the advancement of the technology need to be addressed rather than referring the outdated technology. Apart from that, if we refer the pastoral framework from the point of view of the legal factors, then we also need to refer the legal aspects, where very commonly we need to see different statutory provisions like the different acts and legal angle and dimensions. So, for an example, the monopolies legislation or the antitrust regulation, like the Competition Act 2002, which is meant to curb the rise of concentration of wealth in a few hands and of monopolistic practices. Similarly, on the front of employment law, the minimum wages or the working condition is somewhere addressed or considered through these type of legislations. Then the health and safety norms, with a view, if we refer the Factories Act 1948, Mines Act 1952, Dock Workers Act 1996, or maybe Child and Adolescent Labor Prohibition Regulation Act 1986, or maybe the Contract Labor Act 1970, if we refer. So these act categorically addresses the health and safety norms. So one has to be well aware, have a detailed understanding of these three, or before consider a specific type of industry or a firm in a specific sector. Then similarly, product safety regulation, like we have seen the case of FSSAI, that is Food Safety and Standard Authority of India, or maybe apart from that, there can be various other dimensions or the policies that one can refer to, including the licensing policies, quota restrictions, import duties, forex regulations, FDI regulations. Control on distribution and pricing of commodities can also be part of the legal framework which is taking place in a specific country or on the global platform. The last framework in pastoral framework is the ecological environment or the ecological factors which are considered, which can include like the carbon emission position or the standard set for the carbon emissions. Is there some timeline to which a carbon emission has to be restricted, or the pollution level in a specific region, environmental sustainability related aspects, the government position on that environmental sustainability and specific initiatives are if being taken, so need to be considered, need to be addressed. Maybe the position of global warming or maybe biodegradable material. So these are some of the common ecological factors which are addressed or analyzed from the pastoral framework point of view. Now, after the pastel framework, we now have to refer important metrics, that is external factor evaluation, EFE metrics, which is a very important tool which helps the strategist to summarize and evaluate the pastel factors. And it primarily include five major steps. In the step one, the key external factors are identified and they are categorized in terms of prominent opportunities and the threats for the firm. And once these key external factors are identified, then each of these factors are assigned a weight to respective factors, and that weight can range from 0 to 1, where 0 stands for not that important. On the other hand, 1 means very important. And when we assign this weight to each of these factors, the sum of all the weight should be equal to 1. It cannot be less than 1, it cannot be more than 1. And it is usually based on the industry. Now, in step 3, we need to assign a rating to each factor that can be from 1 to 4, and it is usually a organization based rating where the rating scale from 1 to 4, 1 stands for poor response, 2 is average response, 3 is above average response, and 4 is superior response. So in step number 4, the weight and the rating which is we have assigned in these two steps are multiplied together so that the weighted score can be calculated, and based on that the total weighted score of the organization is calculated. And as an example, you can see in this visual that a firm is identified with some set of opportunities. Around five opportunities has been earmarked in terms of the key external factors, and at the same time, five major threats have also been identified in this case, where the weight for each these key external factors has been assigned between 0 to 1. Say, in the case of opportunity, the third number of key external factor, that is growth of social media advertising, has been given 0.05 as a weight. At the same time, and the rating is also assigned to each of these key external factors, and which is in between 1 to 4, and the weighted score is calculated, which is the weight and the rating multiplication. And based on that, if we add the total score of these, then we can analyze that the total weighted score of this firm is 2.10. And if we analyze the position of the weighted score, then the LEFE metrics state that if the weighted score is 4, then the response of the organization to the opportunities and threats is very excellent. On the other hand, if it is less, then it is not. But since in the case of this particular firm, it is 2.10, it means more than 50%. So it can be considered, but at the same time, it can be better than that. Then in that case, it will be a welcome sign. Now we need to refer to the unit 5 of block 2, that is the competitive analysis, where we will be covering some of the important topics, including the competitive forces, concept of competitive analysis, Porter's five forces model or the framework, then the role of strategic groups in competitive analysis, and the analysis or the analyzing the social media competitive analysis, or another aspect or the last aspect in this unit would be the competitive profile matrix, that is CPM. So let's begin with the concept of competitive forces. So once the Bill Gates has said that whether it's Google or Apple or free software, we have got some fantastic competitors and it keeps us on our toes. So very good quote has been referred by Bill Gates, and which has set the tone of discussion for unit number 5, where the competitive forces, if we need to understand, then they are the factors or the variables that threaten a company's profitability and prevent its growth. And therefore, if we refer the success mantra of business in the competitive environment, then two major aspects one need to consider. One, any organization can only be successful if it has the ability to formulate an effective strategy. And second, this can be done by collecting all the relevant information about competitors and evaluate them to formulate their own strategy. In this case, if we refer the key forces for a competitive analysis, then it is a kind of strength of the competitors. One need to consider, apart from that, the weaknesses of the competitors, the objectives and strategies of the competitors, response of the competitors towards the pestle factors, vulnerability of the competitors to alternative strategies of other organizations, vulnerability of the organizations to their alternative strategies, positioning of the products, services relative to major components, and the status of entry and exit of new and the old business organizations respectively. Apart from that, the key forces for a competitive analysis can also include the key factors resulting in the present competitive position in the industry, trends of the sales and profits ranking of major competitors in the industry, suppliers and distributor relationships in the industry, threats to to the competitors due to the substitute products oblique services, if we refer. Like, very good example we have, like CFL versus the LED, or the kind of competition or the kind of replacement of the substitute goods. Based on this competitive analysis, if we skip the concept of Porter five forces analysis, then we may not be justifying the concept of or the competitive edge aspect. Therefore, we are considering Porter's five forces analysis, which is a kind of evolution of a competitor's strategy that helps the organization in establishing the unique selling or service proposition of its product or service. Here, the Porter's five forces model of competitive analysis is considered as one of the most widely used approaches in terms of developing the strategies. It is a well-known tool for analyzing the competitive environment that helps in explaining how forces in the competitive environment shape strategies and affect the performance of the firm. Michael Porter primarily identified five competitive forces. One was the rivalry, second is the new entrants, third is the substitute products, fourth is the bargaining power of the suppliers, and fifth is the bargaining power of the buyers. So we will discuss in detail through this visual. You can easily identify the key components within the respective each one of these five forces which has been analyzed or identified by the Porter. So in this case, one can see the threats of new entrants. So when we talk about the threats of new entrants, you can see that when new entrant enter into the market, then there is a high possibility that very common variables can address that aspect, and where the existing firm can analyze its own position in terms of the competitive edge, its position in terms of the competitive edge. So some of the variables could be the barriers to entry. If large amount of barriers are there, a lot of restrictions are there, so in that particular case, the new entrants will find it very difficult, which could be a favorable situation to the existing firm in the market. On the other hand, some other more relevant variables within these forces could be, like in the case of threats of new entrants, the variable could be included as, or the question could be included as, the economies of scale, brand loyalty towards the new entrants product, capital requirement for the new entrants, cumulative experience, the government policies, access to distribution channel, or one important is the switching cost. The second force identified by Porter was the bargaining power of buyer, which means the kind of customers which are dependent on your product, that is the firm that we are referring to, for which the strategies or the competitive edge based strategies need to be formulated. So in that particular case, the number of customers in the market plays very important role. If they are very large in number, then they are the market leaders. But at the same time, if they are very less, so in that case, they may not hold a good position in the competitive edge point of view, or maybe from the negotiation point of view. Apart from that, the size of each customer order, the difference between competitors, the price sensitivity, maybe the buyer's ability to substitute uh, the product with the other one, or the buyer's information availability. And apart from that, the switching cost. Like we can say, like if the customer is having a specific water purifier, say AquaGuard, and they need to change to some other. So in that case, the complete product need to be changed from AquaGuard to some other. Similarly, the threats of the substitute product, as we have seen in previous discussion, very recently discussion, we have seen the case of CFL versus LED. So on similar cases, some of the common very common factors included in this case is the number of substitute products available, the buyer prosperity of substitute good, the relative price performance of substitute, perceived level of product differentiation, or the switching cost. So these are some of the aspects. Apart from that, if we refer the bargaining power of the supplier, then it can include three major, parameters to be considered. One is the number and the size of the suppliers, which plays very crucial role in terms of the, developing a kind of competitive edge for the firm. Apart from that, the uniqueness of each supplier's product in terms of the qualitative aspect, or maybe the focus in company's ability to substitute. And the last force in the five forces analysis of Porter is the rivalry among existing competitor, which include the number of competitors in the respective sector or the industry, diversity of competitors, industry concentration, industry growth, quality differences, brand loyalty, barriers to exit, and the switching cost are some of those important aspects. Now, if we need to summarize the Porter's five forces analysis, then it's a kind of powerful competitive strategy employed by one rival can greatly intensify the competitive pressure on the other rivals. At the same time, the frequency and rigor with which rivals use any or all competitive weapons at their disposal can be a major determinant of whether the competitive pressure associated with rivalry are cutthroat, fierce, strong, moderate, or the weak. Based on this Porter's five forces model or the technique, we also need to understand the concept of strategic groups. So they are the conceptual clusters in the sense that they are grouped together for purpose of improving analysis and understanding the competition within their industry. As an example, if we take the case of four-wheeler automobile industry, then the strategic group in this case could be the thought of cars, multi-utility vehicles, MUVs, or the sport utility vehicles, SUVs. So it's a kind of categorization based on the strategic groups within the four-vehicle automobile industry. It can also include the geographic distribution, breadth of markets, products and service quality, which may be few others to determine strategic groups. Apart from that, we also need to understand the competitive intelligence, which is primarily kind of information which is relevant in terms of strategy formulation regarding the environmental context within which the business organization competes to each other. Now, if we refer the uses of competitive intelligence, then it provides a description of the competitive environment that primarily inform strategists and guide them about the strategy formulation. It is also useful in terms of challenge the common assumption about the competitive environment and forecasting future development in the competitive environment. It also helps full in terms of identifying and compensating for exposed competitive weaknesses and determining when a strategy is no longer viable or sustainable. It also helps in terms of indicating when and how strategy should be adjusted to changing competitive environment. If we refer the scenario planning, then this is another important dimension in terms of helping decision makers by way of identifying ranges of potential outcomes or the scenarios and impacts, which further helps in terms of evaluating responses and manage for both positive and negative possibilities that may arise during the course of functioning of the organization. This is by visualizing potential risks and opportunities, the businesses can become proactive versus simply reactive to the events which happen in a course of action. Now, as an example, if we refer the scenario planning, then we can understand it from two different variables, that is the talent availability and the competitor growth. So in this particular case, four major scenarios may occur. The scenario one could be of sustained competitiveness, where the talent availability is in surplus, but at the same time, the competitor growth is also very high. The scenario 2 may arise, which is excessive supply, where the talent availability is surplus, but on the other hand, the competitor growth is not that high, means it is marginally available, means weak. The scenario 3 in this case could be where we are comparing the talent availability and the competitor growth is the battle for talents, where the talent availability is scarce, not that good, not easily available, but at the same time, the competitor growth is very high. That is, booming situation is there. So in that particular case, the strong growth of competitor, but at the same time, the talent is scarce in nature. The last scenario is the downshifting economy, where both the talent availability and the competitor growth is limited, means the downshifting economy. In this case, the weak growth of competitor and scarce talent is, is seen. Now we also need to refer another concept in the case of this unit, that is social media competitive analysis. That is the way to stay ahead of the competitors and gauge new opportunities and potential threats. And it primarily helps in identifying competitors on social media, knowing the social platforms the competitors are using, also knowing the ways through which they are using these platforms, and understanding the response towards which the social strategy of the competitors are being preferred. It, apart from that, also helped in terms of benchmarking the social result against the competition, and also helping out in terms of identifying social threats, and also by finding gaps of one's own social media strategy. Now, there are four major steps involved in the case of social media competitive analysis. First is by way of determining the competitors. Second, getting the information or gathering the information related to these competitors. Number three step, we do the SWOT analysis of these. And in fourth number of step, to be up to date information on the competitor's position. Now, another important tool in terms of competitors profile metrics, or we also call it as the competitive profile metrics, which is the CPM tool, very commonly used in terms of understanding the competitor's position and the position of the firm, which is analyzing this CPM. So it is used, this tool, that is CPM, is used to compare the organization with its competitors. And the use of this tool is that it tries to highlight the strong and the weak points of the organization relative to its competitors. And again, it involves four major steps, where in step number one, the critical success factors or CSF are identified. And in the second step, each of these critical success factor are assigned a weight between a range of 0 to 1, where 0 stands for the least important factor and 1 applies for the highly important factor. In this case, this indicates the degree of importance to a particular factor. In step number 3, we refer or assign the ratings to each organization for respective critical success factor, where the range need to assign is between 1 to 4. where 1 stand for the major weakness, 2 stand for minor weakness, 3 stand for the minor strength, and the 4 stand for the major strength. Once the rating to each organization for respective critical success factor is assigned, then after that we assign a score to each organization by multiplying the weights assigned and the rating assigned. So as an example, we can take this matrix where around 10 major critical success factors have been identified, including online advertising, credibility, sales per employee, supply chain, advertising, cost structure, new product, or say customer loyalty. So these are some of the critical success factor identified, which are given a specific weight between 0 to 1. The total of the weight of all these critical success factor should not be less than 0 or more than 1. Now, each of these competitors, including the firm which is calculating this competitive profile matrix, can include its own position as well as the other competitors, and they can assign a rating to that competitor or that firm between 1 to 4. And once that rating has been assigned, now the score, that is the score with respect to the weight and the rating, need to be multiplied, and the score is calculated, and the total of these score for the respective competitor is calculated. And in this scenario, a specific competitor which is having the highest score or the sum total of score is considered as, one of the strongest competitor in the industry. And in this scenario, in this particular example, if we conclude, then competitor number 2 has the highest score, that is 2.89, where the competitor 1 got the score of 2.41, which is the least, and the moderate score of this matrix is in the case of the competitor 3, which is 2.66. So the best position in this case is of competitor number 2 in the industry. Now, based on this particular case, we can also analyze that if the firm is willing to address to a specific type of position, so they can also make a comparison that, for example, the innovation position is also there. So in this case of critical success factor, we can also analyze that the innovation is one of the critical success factor where the competitor 1 was having a good position of by giving a rating 4, but on the other hand the competitor number 3 was having the least position by assigning to the rating of 1. On the other hand, if we refer the another critical success factor, that is cost structure, so on that front the competitor number 3 is having a good rating where it is having 4 as the rating. On the other hand, the competitor number 1 is having the least rating in the case of cost structure. So in this competitive profile matrix, if we, other than competitor 1, 2 and 3, we also take the advantage of addressing the firm which is primarily calculating its own competitive profile matrix, then they can compare. They can compare from different other competitors, whether competitor 1, 2, 3, that to what extent they are having a good advantage or the competitive edge in terms of these critical success factors. Apart from that, if we also refer the position or the weak position in this case, then we can conceptualize based on the score obtained by competitor 1, which is the least. As said earlier, it is somewhere around 2.41, means the competitor 1 in overall competitive profiling metrics is scoring least. But in that case, if the firm which is calculating this competitive profile matrix is somewhere higher than 2.41 but lesser than 2.89, so in this particular scenario, the firm which is calculating is into better position than the competitor one, but on the other hand, is not that competitive or not able to address the competitive advantage of the competitor two or the firm number two. Similarly, if we compare these critical success factors, then these are the factors which the firm has identified from the external factors like the credibility of the firm, maybe some other areas one can easily identify like the market share. So market share can also be included, like the level of online advertising the firm is referring, maybe the supply chain position of the firm in the market. So based on that, these critical success factors have been applied and which substantiate in terms of identifying or applying the kind of competitor's position. And in this example, as we have just concluded, that the competitor number two out of three competitors analysis is into good position since it has the highest score, and it means it is the stronger than its rivals in this particular industry. Now we have reached at the end of the session, and therefore I need to have a quick recap what we have discussed in today's session. So we have discussed two unit of block number two, that is unit number four, external market analysis, and the unit five, that is competitive analysis. In unit four, we discussed about the importance of environmental analysis, the broad dimensions in a general environment, the relationship between the general environment and the strategy, to what extent the general environment helps the manager in defining the strategy or identifying the strategy. Apart from that, we also refer the concept of industrial organization model. Further, we also refer the PESTEL framework for analysis, where the political factors, economical factors, socio-cultural factors, technological factors, legal factors, and ecological factors were discussed, considering each for the PESTEL framework. Apart from that, the implication of each factor in the case of PESTEL framework were discussed, and the unit 4 was also covering the concept of external factor evaluation, that is EFE matrix. In the case of unit 5, that is competitive analysis, the competitive forces, what exactly the concept of these competitive forces, the concept of competitive analysis, the five forces model or the five forces analysis given by Michael Porter was discussed, which include the rivals position, substitute goods position, the position of the negotiation position of the supplier, the negotiation position of the customer or the buyers was also discussed. Apart from that, the role of strategic groups in competitive analysis was discussed today, and the concept of social media competitive analysis was also referred, and the last concept in this unit was the competitive profile metrics. So that's all for today. Thank you very much.
Yes,